Welcome everybody. I'm excited to be here today with you all. The title of the workshop or the webinar, as you know, is Diverse Hiring for Inclusivity. It's very timely given that we have the Diversity and Inclusion Project underfoot and waiting to be rolled out. So we can get to the goals of today. And as Angela said, the workshop will be recorded.
Did the recording start? Sorry for interrupting. Angela, can you tell if Jody started the recording?
Yes, it's recording.
Okay, thanks. Sorry for interrupting.
Okay. So the workshop will require a lot of participation. It's not going to be about Rebekah and I sitting here as two talking heads. It's about opening up conversation and thought processes. So it will be participatory. There will be breakout sessions for small group discussions on the following topics. Inclusive hiring practices, what inclusiveness means in practice versus theory, access tools, resources to help with recruitment, hiring processes, and starting the process to develop an action plan for targeted recruitment and hiring practice.
So this is actually going to bring us into our first activity. So you're going to be placed into breakout groups, and that's going to be your group for the day. So in terms of your first activity, please discuss the challenges you faced when trying to hire from diverse groups. So maybe assign one person to report back. You're going to have 10 minutes in your session and 1 minute to report back. And when we start to report back, if there's something that one of the groups already mentioned, we'll just ask you to omit that and just kind of build on anything that's new that comes up in your group. So you guys should be in your group in just a couple of minutes.
So from our group, some of the challenges that came up were challenges with attracting applicants or candidates for positions in terms of hiring diversity. And another challenge that came up was designated positions not being the ideal approach to hiring diversity. I'm not sure, Amy, if you want to elaborate on that point.
Yeah, that was coming from a government perspective, is that there's a ability within government to do designated positions, but you have to get very specific about the who and the exact candidate you're looking for. And we were talking about wanting to increase in the hiring process, just the general hiring process, the amount of diversity candidates that we have versus a designated position. Nothing wrong with designated positions, certainly have their place and would love to use them too. But in addition to that, we were talking about some of the antiquated ways of job posting that maybe we need to get a lot more creative to have outreach about the positions that we have. So that was just a government perspective.
Thanks. Anyone from group 3? Can you tell us who's in group 3?
Yeah, I took notes for that. In our group, we talked about inclusiveness of workplace, who to reach out to make connections. There's a few diverse applicants that have applied to their postings, creating safe places, what kind of connections to build, and then there's not a lot of turnover, so unable to bring other people in, and then reputation being positive or negative.
And what about group 4? Group 4.
That would be us. Very similar kinds of conversations going on with a couple other thoughts and just sort of echoing Caleb that, you know, to find applicants from diverse populations, that we need to ensure that the places they're going into are going to be safe spaces, but that they're not just being hired, you know, as the token person, because it's not comfortable being the only one of anything in a workplace. And not comfortable, you know, it goes beyond that, of course. But the other thing too is the need. You know, we talked a lot about not getting the applications, so ending up going out and actually having to do headhunting. And we talked about the institutional imperatives that stop you from being able to do that on occasion, which is really aggravating. So that sort of summed up. And again, about being more proactive and more creative in the job calls. You know, it's not just enough to identify that this is targeted for a specific population. You need to go beyond that as well. So that pretty much sums up, I think, unless somebody from the group has anything else to add.
Oh, that's good. You covered it all.
Thank you, Judy.
And group 5.
I think that's us. So basically what was discussed was that some of the challenges is we often get typical respondents, so not a big group of diverse candidates. So also sometimes the candidates do not meet the requirements for the postings, so the diverse candidates. And we also talked about for those working in a unionized environment, it's there's challenges there because you have to go by seniority, and it's hard to encourage people to apply and to actually get in. So that was part of the challenges mentioned. What was also mentioned was some were actually outsourcing to other agencies for support. And one of the reasons for that is we've been looking and studying and all of this, and it's time to move to action. So that's part of the action that they're trying to do, is to get help from other sources to have support to encourage the diverse candidates to apply and to go find them. So that was part of the conversations that we've had. If I miss anything, you please chime in, gang.
Was there anything that group number 1 wanted to add in terms of the challenges that you faced when trying to hire?
Yeah, because did we get to go while I was bounced out there, Beck? I don't think we did we?
No, but someone did mention from your group that you may have talked about you might have did the wrong activity.
We did group 1, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, activity 1.
It's important to focus on skills and aptitude rather than experience. That one?
No, that's for the next one.
Oh, well, we did that.
For the next one.
We did that. Do you want us to share?
No, we'll do that for activity 3.
Okay.
Why is my clicker not working?
It said activity 3, but the groups that you sent me were broken down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So.
Right, but there was an activity 1 in there too.
Oh.
Okay, my clicker's not working.
Well, we can add to the discussion if you like.
Yeah, if there's anything that wasn't said, you guys can certainly add to it.
Yeah.
So in terms of some of the things that you guys mentioned, some of these things are on there in terms of people not applying. People apply with minimal experience. Unsure, some people are unsure where to post or how to recruit from diverse communities, or maybe there's lack of diverse networks. Disconnection to diverse communities, uncertainty about inclusive language and job postings, or lack of knowledge about designated postings. We're actually going to come back to some of these challenges, and any of the challenges that you guys listed, Lynda and I are taking some notes. So any challenges that you guys listed that are not in the PowerPoint, we'll add to that so that you guys can have those as well. And we are going to come back to look at some of the challenges when we look at some of the action pieces. Oh, the clicker's working now.
Okay, so we're just going to keep this moving. We don't have a whole lot of time. We're going to go right into activity 2. And people need to think about the community that you serve and the members who are part of that community. And then think about your office and your workplace. In your group, develop a brief definition of an inclusive workplace. And what actions you need to take to demonstrate inclusivity in your workplace. Use action words where possible. And again, you'll have 10 minutes for discussion and assign a person to report back.
So is this in small groups? Are we doing this as a larger?
Yeah, Joe's
You're
gonna
be
put,
broke out again, yeah.
yeah, Joe's gonna put back in your groups.
Oh, okay, thank you.
This is activity 2.
While they're in their group, I'm gonna PowerPoint right quick.
Hi there, whoever just joined us. I'm just going to assign you to a breakout room. They're in the middle of having a group discussion.
Oh, thank you. It's Shyla.
Hi, Shyla.
I'll put my video on.
There we go. So they're about to end in 15 seconds, and then there'll be a minute till they get out of their rooms. Okay, I'm going to close them now.
All right, is everyone back?
No, not yet. Okay, everyone's back now.
Okay, hi everybody.
Hi.
It was a good discussion in the groups. I know it's not a whole lot of time. 10 minutes isn't a lot of time for, really deep discussion. So we'll be reporting back now. So group 1.
Angela's group.
Oh, that's our group? Okay. We had a great conversation. I think we could have kept talking for quite some time. So I'll just try to focus on the key points that we did all agree on, and that's how to really involve a new hire or anybody that's coming into a position for the first time, how really to make them feel included. There were so many suggestions, from making sure you're available and spending time with the individual, making sure that they're comfortable, and by doing so, you're personally introducing them to the rest of the team, maybe hosting some small lunches or taking that person to lunch to really get to know them, which was a really good idea. Also making your team aware of where individuals may come from, what their backgrounds include, what those barriers may have looked like, so individuals don't already form an opinion. Shaping those conversations about their roles and their backgrounds and helped to better understand how to support each team member. So that was a really good suggestion. And really taking time to introduce ourselves, not just, what your name is and what your position or your new role is going to be, but really who you are and what your background consists of. And getting to know someone's values and their beliefs really helps you to shape a relationship and look at them as a person, not just as someone you share a workspace with.
Great. Okay, group 2.
Group 2, okay, we also had a lot of really good conversation. We talked a lot about what does an inclusive workplace reflective of the communities that we serve, meaning that as either an individual, a colleague that's working there, or an individual getting assistance, you can see yourself around you and the people that you're working with and the people that are serving or supporting you. We talked about the notion of what diversity is versus what inclusion is and how those are interconnected. And one of the comments that I think resonated with many of us, particularly myself, was diversity means you're invited to the party, and inclusion is being asked to dance.
Yeah, just give me a moment, please.
So I thought that was a really great summary. Then we talked about economic and social diversity. So ensuring that various backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, are present in the spaces and places that we work and we go to receive support, and that in doing so, that'll help us be empathetic and really understanding to our colleagues and our clients. And then when we transition to the how or the specific actions, the term pluralism was raised, meaning that the views of the minority are equally as reflected as the views of the cultural majority. There shouldn't be that separation. So there's a lot of work to be done on getting there, but if we can focus on pluralism, then we can move the needle. And then we talked about transitioning from socializing the D&I strategy to really moving into action. So how do we get to the next tangible steps of moving that forward? And I know there's a lot of great work being done on that. So that's where we landed. We spent a lot of time talking about part A of the activity, and we ran out of time on part B, quite frankly, because we had so many thoughts.
Okay, great. Group 3.
Yep. So same thing happened. We ran out of time, so we didn't come up with a concise definition of the inclusive workplace, but I've captured a lot of thoughts in no particular order that I'll share with you. So giving special thoughtful attention to the space, ensuring that it is accessible to all, being cognizant of our method of communication, using different formats, different media, different languages, being also cognizant of our own internal communications. And so case in point, I'm very quick and abrupt. And in my head, I'm thinking, we're just getting this done. But when someone receives that message, it's seen as aloof or not caring, or just being really cautious around the way we communicate, or set the right expectations from the get-go around communication so that we don't get ourselves into a situation where it's not well received. Not making any assumptions, and so NEDAC, so Jackie talked about designing a new space and inviting folks from the First Nations community, and also inviting folks from the LGBTQ community to come and see the space and see how welcoming and inclusive it feels. Providing opportunities for collaboration to help with that team building, also providing special projects so to help leverage folks' passions and interests, bring that into the workplace, giving the autonomy to lead projects, also giving opportunities for diverse voice, applying consistent practices when dealing with all staff, setting clear expectations from the get-go for all staff. So making sure that everybody has a very clear and detailed onboarding process to make sure that they're well equipped to assume the new role, and that we are well equipped to welcome them into the work environment. Performance conversations. So I know everybody's like, wah, 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 performance appraisals. I know it has a negative connotation, but being sure that you're having those regular and positive conversations consistently, because folks, I know myself included, we just want to know what to do, when to do, how to do it, and we want to do a little temperature check to ensure we're on the right. It's too late 6 months down the road to say, you've been doing an awful job. So that's on your management team to ensure that those conversations are happening regularly and that they are delivered in a positive way. We talked about clear expectations. We talked about having clear policies and procedures that are developed also with a diversity and inclusion lens. Did I forget anything, group 3? Did I throw out all the key stuff? All right, cool.
Okay, thank you. Group 4.
Wow, that's a lot. That's good. Sorry, we kind of also got hung up on the first part of it, and we ended up actually coming up with a definition, which I think encompasses the second part, although we didn't talk about, we ran out of time before we could talk about specific actions, but our definition basically came down to an inclusive workplace is one at whose core lies vulnerability, respect, accountability, and is open to listening and sharing. It's reflective both in physical space and in staff of the community or communities it serves at all levels of the organization, and it must be a safe space, and trust must be worked on. That was a very rough and ready version of all the things that we talked about. So does anybody have anything to add from my group?
Well, can you email that definition to Angela?
Absolutely.
Group 5 was Francine's group that she was in.
So we mostly had more comments and discussion. So part of the what was discussed was that candidates look at the senior management team to evaluate the cultural competency. So it signals a level of commitment in an inclusive workplace when they look at that the senior management team. We also talked about visible diversity versus invisible diversity. For those that it's non-visible, just to make sure that they feel comfortable to discuss with other staff members, share. Important to foster an environment where they feel safe to share, and ensure that it's a welcoming workplace when you hire your staff. Also talking about hiring practices, and the interview committee should be diverse to demonstrate that the workplace is a diverse workplace and an inclusive workplace. And it helps the candidates to envision themselves in the workplace. Also, a comment was made that most individuals know within 24 to 48 hours if they will stay there. So the onboarding is very, very important. And we talked about an asset-based approach. Also, the same discussion about working on a definition of an inclusive workplace. Also, not taking a one-size-fits-all approach to employment. It's not trying to fit anyone in a box, but open to different forms of doing work. And lastly, we talked about when you realize you don't know, you seek out people who do. So you should make every effort to find support in whatever you need support in. Making efforts to understanding, making connections, reach out for support in order to move to action. Yeah, that's basically what we discussed. Not sure if we actually answered the question with the action words, but we had those conversations. And the 10 minutes flies.
It sounds like it was a really good conversation.
It was.
So I did mention earlier that some of the comments that are coming from you guys are things or great ideas that came up that aren't in the presentation, and you guys are actually in your activities or in your breakout groups. We're trying to update the PowerPoints to ensure that these components are in. So we have some other examples in terms of how you can demonstrate inclusivity. So train employees on diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism. You know, sometimes when you think about it, a number of the people that are in the room today are EDs or other partners. Sometimes some of the issues are actually not necessarily with the EDs. It could be with the coworkers or with their peers. So some of those little everyday microaggressions, things like that. So it's really important that the team is actually prepared to receive new employees as well, not just the ED. Ensure that your workplace has anti-racism policies in place. Recruit from racialized communities. Form partnerships and networks with racialized communities. Educate employees on cultural awareness and sensitivity. Develop culturally inclusive hiring practices. Some of these points that are up here, I know some of them are points, we're going to break some of these down again a little further. Include persons from diverse cultures in the hiring process in all levels. So in terms of the recruitment, the interviewing, and the selection. There's probably lots of times where people have reached out to individuals, asked them to help with the interviewing, and then once they participate, they give their feedback, it's kind of dismissed, and they still kind of go with what they were leaning towards anyway. So really that part's really important. And make room at decision-making tables for diversity.
So some hiring challenges. Job postings do not reach diverse communities. Hiring processes are not diverse and flexible, often designated with a lens that is not representative. Interview questions are not representative and do not account for diverse experiences. Potential candidates do not see diverse representation on site. The interview panel and processes are not inclusive.
And I guess to kind of summarize that up, like every single person has their own social location, and that's our lens. Like we see the world based on who we are, right? So based on who I am, that may be how I develop a process, develop a tool, determine how the interview process is going to happen, determine the job posting. We use that. It's the only way I can do it is with my own lens, unless I have feedback or input from other people. So we have to be mindful that the things that we do or we produce or how we do things is based on our lens. And if we don't include others, then it may not be very diverse or inclusive.
So we're moving right along into activity 3, and this one will be a little longer. Each group is going to be given a separate topic to discuss, and you'll have 10 minutes for discussion. I think reporting back will take a little longer. So you're going to be broken up into your groups again, and in group 1, you're going to be given the activity.
Can you say who's facilitating each group? Are these the groups that I signed yesterday and then I messed up today? Okay.
The room facilitators have copies of the activities?
Yes, I sent them out.
Okay. Okay, so we'll actually, so each group has them, so we'll review them when we come back when you guys are reporting back. So we'll let you guys get into your group discussions because you guys should have the activity in your room.
Okay, so you just break out into your group.
We can hear a lot of background noise when we break up. Is there a way to eliminate that?
It should only be you should only be able to hear the people that are in your room.
Okay, well, sometimes I think we can hear you and Lynda. So maybe you guys can mute you when we're broken.
Yeah, we muted last time, but we'll do it again.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I think we could talk forever in these small groups. So Chica, that wasn't you with the background noise. I apologize for blaming you.
Okay, thanks.
When I text you. Oh, she's on the phone.
You text me again?
I did, but it wasn't you. We found the culprit.
Sorry.
No, Sherry. Now, see, I didn't name names.
Now we know, Sherry.
How's everyone doing? How are we doing for time here, Beck?
You know what? Well, it's 11:11. So one of the things that we were going to do our activity for, we probably won't be able to do, but Lynda and I were just figuring out ways to revise. You know, really, this would have been ideal to do in person or have more time allotted for it, but I started updating the PowerPoint with the comments from the different activities. So when I'm done, Angela, I'll send it to you so we can add in that definition that Paula is going to email, and then we can
Thank you.
Yep. To everybody. What we may also, is everybody back now? I think everybody's back.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Why, how long would activity 4 take? More than 10 minutes?
Well, we have to get everyone to, we want everyone to report back, which will probably take a few minutes depending on what their topic was.
Okay, yeah, and we're moving closer to quarter after.
Yeah, okay. We're going to start with the reporting back.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. And now my thing's not working again.
So we can start our reporting back, and we can start with group 1. There's a little bit of confusion as to what it was all about, because everything's entitled Activity 3. So group 1, your focus was, it was important to focus on skills and aptitudes rather than experience. Racialized communities have been shadowed of opportunities, which gives them an uneven playing field on which to compete. What can you do to accommodate that need? So group 1, can you report back on your question? Is that you, Angela?
No. I'm group 3.
Juniors group.
That's juniors group, I think.
No, I'm group 3.
Yeah, it was group 4 that and we did that question. So do you want me to go ahead and just tell you what we came up with?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically we did a lot of talking about this. And where we sort of landed was that we need to hire for aptitude and not necessarily experience. And I had mentioned that, you know, doing outcomes-based job calls and job descriptions and, you know, using RPL, recognition of prior learning, as the basis for this, if you're trying to hire more diverse, I think is far more important. And you know, when we came back to doing headhunting, so trying to find specific individuals, or at least, you know, individuals from community, was one way of doing this. And we looked at, you know, this idea about skills and aptitudes versus experience. And we talked a lot about, you know, and I talked about now, and how one of the things we heard back from a lot of the now participants was that they had, you know, and that we knew that, and the proponents knew that they had the qualifications for jobs, they just weren't able to get their foot in the door. And so programs like now provided the foot in the door for many of them. And once they got in there, you know, then everything went, I'm not always going to say swimmingly, but certainly they had the, you know, the chance to actually get in there and do what they knew they could do. And, you know, with many, many, many success stories in that, as we know, now. And we talked about, you know, and when you're doing job calls, we often put an equivalency for education, but we don't put equivalency for experience. And I had said, you know, the call that we've developed for Michael's position, we've done that technically because of the university, the way they have their position structured, technically requires a minimum of a master's level. However, because for that particular position, we need to hire somebody from the, certainly a person of color, but preferably from the African Nova Scotian or person of African descent from those communities. You know, it's not necessary that they have the master's. We're far more interested in having the experience, depth of experience in working in community. And we talked about the importance of first voice and allowing first voice to direct your way of doing your hiring practices and developing policies and that kind of thing. And it's difficult when you're working within a large institution, which is not necessarily the most diverse on the planet Earth. But it doesn't matter, you got to go ahead and do it. You know, if you can't, it's like lead, follow, or get out of the way. And I'm kind of at the point of the get out of the way and let us get on with things stuff. But you didn't hear it from me. I didn't say that. Yeah. And so I think that pretty much sums up what we talked about. The basic, I think it boiled down to the importance of recruitment and screening and letting the community lead again. And if I missed anything, rest of group, please feel free to add in.
Great. So group 2, who had group 2's question? Who's reporting back on that?
I think that was Brenda.
Yeah.
So,
for group 2, we spent more time looking at, how do you identify your implicit bias? Because that's not an easy thing to tackle or wrap your mind around. But it's important to identify positionality and your background and your experiences and perspectives and how that might help you identify your implicit bias. We talked about how, hiring managers, hiring for people to fit into their team. If your team is already not inclusive, this just further ensures that it remains that way. And how that plays into not hiring diversity. Another thing that came up is that hiring managers sometimes, you want your new hire to hit the ground running and be able to start work immediately, and so you can expedite your ROI. But this excludes people who who have language barriers or other barriers that they might need extra support in being able to successfully transition into their roles. And another thing that came up was the simple actions that we don't see as bias. I guess it's just to save time, I'm not going to get into the details of the stories that were shared. But another thing that came up was making that conscious effort to fill your conscious with information and training and strategies and practices that are inclusive. And so over time that informs your implicit, but also acts as checks to make sure that you evaluate your actions and your decisions to make sure that they aren't overcome with implicit bias. I'm not sure if anyone else has more to add.
Thanks, Brenda.
Next group, they were given tokenism is often mistaken for being, tokenism is often mistaken for being diverse and inclusive. A workplace where an employee is the only individual from a racialized group is isolating, unwelcoming, and an unhealthy environment. What can you do to create inclusivity and avoid tokenism?
So this is my group, and I'm not sure if everybody got to look in their chat, but Joel Murphy from our CEI group, our CEI team shared with everybody a reference to the term tokenism. So using that as a point in conversation here, tokenism is used here to describe those instances in which individuals are apparently given a voice, but in fact have little or no choice about the subject or the style of communicating it, and little or no opportunity to formulate their own opinions. So when we focused on that point and how to create inclusivity and avoid tokenism, well then, of course, you think about your structure and how you hire. So trying to avoid just filling a quota and checking those boxes and avoiding the assumptions that are based on the checks and not on the qualifications. Of course, ideally, it would be to hire more than one individual. If you can look around your workplace and realize that we are lacking in diversity and inclusivity and being welcoming to the communities that we serve. However, our budgets do not always allow us to create these spaces to continue to do so. So we discussed how, you know, if you can just start with one and move from there with a plan, to start a plan and explain to your team that moving forward, you know, positions that will become available will be designated to a community or marginalized group. So we can begin to create these diverse and welcoming spaces for all, and to make sure that you continue to hire from diverse cultures and backgrounds, and to not to overtask the individuals who are diverse on your team to be the educators to your, you know, to any of your organizations or agencies, and inviting external agencies to provide education on topics of diversity can be a continuous learning experience, where your whole organization can take, you know, benefit to those learnings. So another thing that we discussed is the role and the benefits of diversity and inclusion, and what makes that workplace richer, and maybe how we can focus on creating rich, culturally inclusive environments in your workplace, and welcoming those individuals and celebrating each culture is really what it's about, making sure that people do not feel like they are the one and only. There's nothing worse than working in silos and working in isolation, because the individual who realizes that they are the one and only different person visibly on a team, it's convincing them that they're not the token. And you can only do that by creating space to include other individuals. And that's it from us.
Next group 4.
Kayla thinks she was group 3, but sorry, Kayla.
So group 4 was my group, and so we talked about hiring practices and the barriers that are created for racialized groups. Randy shared some of future works practices currently, but talked about how in the past, you know, posting jobs on boards and using language that is trying to attract diversity or racialized groups. However, they didn't experience a lot of success doing that, and so now connecting with a more grassroots community organization that has a better relationship with racialized groups has been more successful, and that it's an ongoing process, and so it's not something that can be necessarily fixed once and for all, but it's something that is a journey and continuously being worked on within the organization. There was conversation about, in this sector or in this space, making the jobs almost like a destination employment, because a lot of folks come in and are upskilled and then leave to other management positions within other organizations. And so making these opportunities sort of a destination employment. Francine and Kim shared some points about how, you know, looking for all the positions have to be bilingual. And so looking for individuals that are bilingual can often create barriers for racialized folks. And also the rural versus urban context, it's much easier to find diverse folks in urban, or diverse bilingual folks in an urban setting as opposed to the rural setting. And then Jess touched on disenfranchising people who often leave home to explore education or work in institutions. And so, yeah, that's it for us.
And the last group 5.
So I have to tell you on Kayla's behalf that she thought she was my number. or the last one that Alfred just shared. So it may be an extension. Kayla, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. So for our group, we talked about ways to avoid tokenism, and we came up with cultural humility, cultural community, sharing knowledge and education, training staff, having a diversity and inclusion committee, building relationships with people, getting to know them and asking questions, being genuine, including these folks in decision making, have an ongoing conversation about inclusiveness, and open to learning different perspectives.
That's great. And maybe just, Rebekah, just quickly, through this group 5, which no one got to report back, we can, as career development practitioners and experts, when it comes to recognizing how we can start to recruit. So it is important for all phases in the job and hiring to reflect diversity and inclusion, including our job posts, recruitment, interviews, selections, etc. So what does this look like in practice? Well, perhaps that's when we can start to look towards further collaboration, right? How can we draw in and use each other's supports and partnerships? So if you realize that perhaps your organization may need some support when you're reaching out to community or when you're trying to target specific groups, then we can only further enrich our relationships by developing these partnerships and working towards the greater goal, which is creating these welcoming and diverse workplaces and in a bigger inclusivity space where we can actually take that word inclusion and turn it into action. And that's by further partnerships and collaborative approaches.
Yeah, and that was a perfect segue into our next slide, Ange.
Yeah.
I'm being mindful of time. I know it's 11:30, but in all honesty, if we could have like just a few more minutes of people's time, because we're going to actually talk about some tips and resources. So hopefully people can spare a few more minutes for us to wrap up. We're going to do one activity that'll probably be more something that you guys can take to do with your organization, but we'll get to that just over the next couple of slides.
Okay. And for folks, if you have to jump off because you have other priorities you need to see to, then that's okay, because we are going to have all these webinars in a series for you to share. So we'll continue on. For those who can't stay, we appreciate you joining us today.
And the things that Angela mentioned or that you guys mentioned in some of your strategies, I won't repeat. But in terms of inclusive recruitment strategies, you identify who it is that you want to recruit. Language is important. That came up in terms of what's in your actual postings. Be prepared to use unconventional means to connect with community. So, sometimes the way that when you have people that don't apply, sometimes to the community, those jobs aren't connecting with those communities. So you might have to be creative. Adopt an interview strategy that will provide you points for diversity candidates. Develop a hiring action plan that is customized for the audience you're trying to reach. Be aware of cultural differences and cultural unawareness and insensitivity, because that creates extra barriers for candidates. Stereotypes and back-to biases have different preconceived notions of body language. It leads us to have judgments. It creates additional barriers for people from racialized groups and shuts them out from opportunities. Make sure that your application process is designed to screen people in. Sometimes postings are designed to screen people out. Paula mentioned about competency-based job descriptions, and that's something that a lot of our employer engagement specialists and job developers are using with employers, because we recognize the importance that it is for our employer clients to do that. So I think it's really important for us to do that as well, have postings that are based on competencies. And ensure that your screening processes are culturally inclusive and attracts diversity. And there was a couple of different things that were mentioned throughout the day that highlighted that. develop culturally inclusive interview tools and techniques, and be sure to shortlist more than 1 or 2 persons from racialized communities.
Yeah, and you know, this depicts, like, you know, the saying that diversity attracts diversity, and that's very true. People from that are racially visible, they can tell by looking, usually, whether an organization or an agency is inclusive or not, if they reflect them. So just keeping that in mind when you're going through and developing your policies and your processes. Some tips for engagement. And some of this was said, you know, in your group, you reported back, connecting with community organizations, reviewing postings to ensure the application criteria does not exclude specific populations, and acknowledge that racism and discrimination exists, and use screening tools that help to level the playing field. Have a selection panel that reflects the individual, and connect with employment engagement specialists for ongoing support.
And the next couple of slides are just some online resources that you can have access to. So in a specific, this one here is the African Nova Scotian directory. So this is actually only a screenshot of what you can access in the directory, but it lists a number of community-based organizations and different departments across Nova Scotia. So when you're advertising and trying to post the position, so like for example, that first one on there, Melnick Hall, that's in Sydney. So that would be ideal for the folks in Cape Breton to maybe reach out to some of the members at Melnick Hall to ensure those postings get out to the Black community. So this is the links there, but again, you guys will all get a copy of this presentation. And another thing we wanted to kind of bring back to everyone's, I guess, front of mind, the forefront of their mind is the welcoming workplaces in terms of the workplace initiatives. There are some really good resources. We're not kind of going to go through all of them, but like some of the things that you can download, like there's an assessment, a diversity assessment tool that you can do based on your own organization, and you can use that when you start to develop an action plan in terms of some of your target hiring processes. There's also things such as a personal bias worksheet that you may want to get your employees to do, and they can keep it private, but it can get them thinking about that, maybe thinking of their own plans on how they want to develop. And I highlighted kind of just the table of contents because all these are live links, so you can go into the business case for diversity, different assessment tools, commitment, hiring practices, partnering, and support. So that's one of the biggest things that I think is going to be key in terms of targeted hiring. You need to develop partnerships and relationships with communities. We talked about this in terms of service delivery. You can't stand at the end of a service or end of a community and say, hey, we're over here, come over here and get our great service. You need to bring services to the individuals. Well, it's the same kind of thing in terms of postings. So those are some online resources that you have access to. There was a piece that we were going to do. We were going to have you just go into groups and start talking about individual action plans. But at this point, for the sake of time, maybe that's something you can start to develop, and Angela and the CEI folks can follow up just to kind of see where you're at with that.
You know what, Rebekah?
Yes.
Not to interrupt you because I know we're really crunching it, but this workshop was so informative and very well attended that I don't doubt that you and Lynda may be requested to do a second segment. So, you know, whatever we didn't get through today, it looks like you would probably still have enough now information and resources to share with us again at another time, perhaps through a community of learning or a community of practice. I would really welcome that, and I hope you guys would agree to do so.
So, with that being said, because yeah, we would do something. That's no problem.
Oh yeah.
And that would be good because then we could actually focus more maybe on the resources and actually developing some of those action plans. That
yeah, definitely. And I'm sure Jamie will be very pleased what the learnings were that you were sharing today. And unfortunately, she couldn't be with us today, and she's very well missed. But she will be back on Monday from vacation. So once these slides and this presentation is shared with her, and she's able to see, you know, the amount of time and effort that went into this, and that how much time we could actually spend, this could actually be a day's worth of convening or communicating. So it would be really well thought out to continue.
It was a lot of information. So what we're hoping now, just to kind of wrap things up, and hopefully this again might be part one of a part two. We're hoping that maybe each person can kind of either tell us one phrase or one line in terms of how they feel moving forward with some of this information. I mean, it wasn't necessarily enough time to kind of get through, and this, this is just kind of touching the surface, right? There's so much more that can be done around inclusive hiring practices. But we'll, I guess, as you feel you want to speak, we'll ask you to unmute yourself and give us your final thoughts.
Hi, this is Colette. I just wanted to throw out one word, feeling supported. So I feel like it's a large team that's working together for a common goal. So I appreciate everyone's input and yeah, supported. So I'm feeling positive.
Thank you,
say that. I'd like to say one thing quick. This is very informative for me. I feel it's helping me to feel really engaged with everybody. And I did get to learn a new term. I never knew what the word was, tokenism. I mean, I know what it meant, but I didn't actually hear the term before. So that was something interesting. Thanks.
Everyone learned something.
Thanks, Rhonda.
I also learned a new term as well, cultural humility. I guess I've been practicing it and didn't realize what it was called. So nice to know.
That's great, Tara. Anyone else? I know some folks have said that they have to say their farewells, and we appreciate them joining in. I look forward to sharing these series with all of you who were able to join us today, and for those folks who were unable to participate, we'll be sure that the CEI will put this package together for all Nova Scotia Works locations to be able to view anytime, and hopefully take part in many more communities of learning and areas of sharing together. Does anybody have any questions before we all sign off?
Can I just make one note?
Yes.
My word is jazz, because I'm really looking forward to moving into the hiring process to replace Michael. But I just also wanted to say to everybody that we're going to be putting the job call out for that for next week, because we need to get his position filled ASAP because the project's moving on and we need the replacement for him. Anyway, so I'm going to be sharing it out through all the usual networks, through the NSCDA and whatnot. But if you could pass it on to people that you think might be appropriate to work as a research coordinator in community, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula.
I'd just like to say for my word, I have to echo Rhonda, informative. And if I can add to that, needed. It was excellent. Excellent session.
Thank you, Francine. I'm so happy to have everybody here. It was great. It doesn't work without everybody's input. Everyone's voice is very important.
And Angela, you're doing a great job. Your words, they really mean a lot, and you're a very smart lady.
I'm just so happy to be the one doing this with all of you, and my connection with Nova Scotia Works continues, and the relationships that I've already had with some of the folks and the ones that will soon develop, and it's going to be great work. I enjoy it. I enjoy being with all of you. No matter how difficult it seems, when we have these conversations, just know that I'm the one person you could probably say just about anything to without offending. So you don't have to worry, because in order to have those conversations, you have to be able to work out that in your head that I can't say this, I may be offensive, but if you have the right supports put into place and you have those individuals that can actually, receive what you're saying and work through that language with you and help you develop a great strategy to just be, exactly where you want to be as far as diverse and inclusive, but more so welcoming and safe and supportive and community driven. You know, we really have to connect to our communities here in Nova Scotia. So the best way to do it is together, because we do have a lot of diversity within Nova Scotia Works. We just have to start drawing on them individually so we can create, you know, more platforms that are first voice based.
Yeah, and please don't hesitate to reach out to Rebekah and I for support, whatever, you know, to consult with. Yeah, don't hesitate. You know, we just want this to really be, you know, free flowing, you know, the exchanges. It's just, you know, this webinar was sort of developed to just generate the conversations and get the thought processes going, and just where the shifts are needed to be able to take control and make those shifts. But to feel safe in doing that, because, you know, people are very guarded, and I found that people were reporting back and they were pretty free in their dialogue, and that was really good. So just to keep this going and to know that, you know, we just want to support and help.
Is there anyone else that's still on with us that wants to give their final thoughts? I think we still have like we had 22 people last time I seen the bar graph.
That's great. I couldn't count 22 people on the list yesterday, Rebekah.
Yeah.
I think we may get to 30. I'm not sure, and we surpassed it. So I was really pleased with that.
Yeah, we still have 21 people on. Anyone else have a final thought?
I was just going to add that it makes me very hopeful when you see that this work is not just being done with your team, by your team, but that it's happening in all different sectors, you know, from government to hiring managers, employers, service providers, and that somehow, you know, there'll be a shift and a change.
I appreciate you, Brenda.
I'm really pleased too that, you know, everyone wants to ensure that they're developing in place, welcoming workplaces. Like that's, you know, it's so great. And it's not only good for people that you're going to be onboarding in these new hires under the diversity and inclusion program, but it's also great for your current staff team. It's just going to make the workplace as a whole lot more healthy.